Well, good morning, everybody. So excited to have you today, and it's really cool that we're engaged in this series called Questions, but today is the very last part in that series where we get to talk one specific question that's actually the number one question that was asked. So basically, a few months ago, we asked our church family, as well as several people that don't know Jesus in the community, and just said, hey, what are your biggest questions about faith and spirituality and Christianity and the Bible and all that? And so we've just been addressing some of those questions in the same way that Jesus would teach often based off of what questions he was receiving. He would engage in teaching off of that. And so we decided to take a few weeks to do that, and today's the last day. And again, today we get to address that number one question, which is this. It's how can I have more self-control and patience? Anybody in here need that today? Yeah? How can I have more self-control and patience? Side note, anytime I ever get to preach on a passage of scripture related to self-control or patience, I'm always frustrated because I know the week leading up to that is going to be like really frustrating and I'm going to be super impatient. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I was like, please let this week be Pastor Rob. And it wasn't. It was me. And so I'm like, man. So leading up to this week, no joke, I'm like, man, God, can all this calm down so I can get to patience? And so it finally though, the week turned out well and we pulled everything together. So it was just one of those weeks. But I totally get why this is such an important question, because in our day and in our age, we can get almost anything we want instantly, can't we? Almost anything we want. I mean, we're an on-demand, instant society, which means we don't have a lot of high views of things like patience. We don't like self-control that much at all, and it's something we just have to work extra hard at. And so, but I think going at this, what I would like to show you in 1 Samuel 16, which is where we'll be in a moment, but instead of addressing how I can get more self-control and patience, I don't really think you need a bullet point list of how. I really think that if we were to change the question a little bit and to say, why? Why do I need more self-control and patience? That I think the how will kind of find its way to you. And what I mean is that if I give you just a bullet point list of hows, all that's okay, but it's very surface level. I would rather give you this deep, meaningful why. Why should I fall in love with God's will in this way? And if you can fall in love with the why, then I think the how will come by itself. So I'd love to just reposition the question a little bit, and I'd love to kind of tell you that through three illustrations. So in our day, if you want to share a picture or, photo or something like that with people online, or if you want to text it to somebody, I mean, phones and social media, it makes that really, really easy in our day and age. Like super instant gratification, we like that, right? So if you're a student in here, just roll on up here if you don't mind, and you can come from back there. Yeah, it's okay. You don't have to be sitting up here, but you guys give it up for the students. Can you do that? We love these guys. They're awesome. So I'm going to give them this really deep thing here, and I'm going to let them kind of do what they do with that. And so what I mean is that in our day and age, if you say, I want to post a picture, I want to take a selfie, and I want to send that to somebody. By the way, a selfie is, supposed to look a little spontaneous. It's never spontaneous, right? Because like they're filing through filters, they're filing through like different angles. They're trying to get their cool factor on. Yep, there it is. And the deep dab. That's smart. I like it. That's great. That's good. So anyway, they're going to continue doing that when I talk to you about this is where our culture's at, everybody. All right. So, but we do this and we can do it instantly, right? Like how fast can you send it? Instantly, right? They can post it online. They can text you from my phone right now, which is a little dangerous, but they can do that right now. They can do that right now. So, but a few years ago, this is an ancient artifact called a Polaroid camera. Everybody, ooh. But my daughters, they actually asked for one last Christmas, and so they got one. This is what they look like today, right? So I'm going to give this to you, as dangerous as that may be. And what you need to know that's different about a Polaroid is that if on today's phones and technology, you can just post it instant, boom, it's out there, it's done. A Polaroid, though, if they gather together and they take a picture and they snap it, you get this beautiful prize that pops out. It's almost like a gift just for you. And as it pops out, you get it, but there's a specific thing about that it's not instant. It's not instant, right? So as soon as it pops out, there's your sweet prize. There's no image on this, right? There's nothing on this yet because I'm going to have to wait a few minutes, right? You guys give it up for them if you don't mind. Give it up for them one more time. Thank you so much. And so it means if on a phone, I can instantly post something. Just boom, it's out there for the world to see right there. On a Polaroid, it's instant kinda, but it takes a few minutes to do it. Now, this is really gonna blow your minds if you're a student in here, but back in the day, you actually had to take a roll of film, right? And I know some of you are photographers in here, so you know that this is your life. But you take a roll of film, you put it into a camera. If you want a picture, this is how it had to go. You put it into a camera, you spin that roll of film, you get done with that, and then you put it into a dark box like this, or maybe a dark room, and you take it out of the camera really carefully. You put it in a cylinder that's something like this, where you kind of put it on a reel and it begins to develop. And then you put it through a series of solutions and cleansing or rinsing and things like that. And ultimately you get this bad boy. Does anybody know what this is called? A negative, right? It's a negative. And you kind of put it out there. You try to let it dry carefully. And then you can blow it up into a bigger image. You put it through the same process, right? Dark room, solution, rinse, hang it out to dry. You're kind of squeegeeing that thing. It involves some canisters like this. And ultimately, you're left with a picture for you to show all of your friends and family about 13 years later. And so that's kind of the process. And so the way that works, honestly, I think it really does take about a day. If you really walk this process carefully and you really put everything together just right and you do it with the negative and then you do it with the full picture, it takes a long time. And so what I mean by that is from beginning to end, there's this slow process that happens as you develop pictures. Now, the question is, why does that relate at all to you and to self-control and to the patience that you're looking for? Well, let me tell you how. We're in a culture of immediate gratification, right? That's our culture that we live in. And it's not all bad. It's beautiful that you can communicate with friends and family so fast. It's actually really great. But in that culture, it's really hard for us to grasp God's will for our lives, God's calling on our lives today, and not expect it to be fully fulfilled tomorrow. True? It's hard for us to, God, I know what you want for me today, but then if it doesn't happen tomorrow, I'm kind of out. I'm kind of done with this. And so if that's true, then talking about how to get self-control and patience would be okay, but I want you to be reminded why. Why is it important for God to walk you through a slow process like this? Because your spiritual maturity is not a quick Instagram post, as much as I want it to be. Your spiritual maturity and the unveiling of God's will for your life is more like carefully developing. I mean, just intricately, carefully developing film. And here's how it goes sometimes. Sometimes when you're younger, you hear God's will for your life, or you know what God's calling you to do, and you fall in love with it. I mean, it's just the greatest thing, and you're passionate about it, and you just, God, whatever you want my life to be, that's what I want to do. I want to spend my life doing this. I feel your presence in my life, and I'm falling in love with your will, and I want to reach other people with the gospel, and I want to be changed by it myself, and you're just fired up about it. You're passionate about it. It's so real to you. But somehow, for some of us, you get 10 or 20 or 30 years down the road, and it's like I find myself no longer on the cutting edge of God's will. I'm not sitting on the edge of my seat, just begging God for His will for my life or seeing it lived out in my life, what I knew God had called me to do years ago. And I would just say, sadly, that's the vast majority of Christian stories, I think, that so few people are asking themselves a very vital question that I would love for you to ask yourself today related to this. Is just, am I willing to be patient and have self-control as God develops me into the image of Jesus? Am I willing? This is the why I want you to fall in love with. Am I willing to be patient and to have self-control as God develops me, His way, not yours, into the image of Jesus? And if you're not willing to do that, you'll cut your own legs out from under yourself and you'll pursue a shallow, kind of quick fix that doesn't allow you to fully rest in Jesus. Instead of getting this full, mature development process with the King of Kings and Lord of Lords in your life. That's why you really need, and I really need, to fall in love with His process. Not what culture just gives me today that is a quick fix today and I see it lived out tomorrow. So, you could define self-control as choosing the important over the immediate because your desires are in order. So choosing the important over the immediate. Why? Because my desires are in order. And I want to show you what this means before we get to 1 Samuel 16. I want to show you in Proverbs 25, verse 28. It's a brief verse, but it's so vital for you. If you don't mind to jot it down off to the side. But it says, like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. In other words, when the walls of self-control are not standing in your life, your sinful nature runs wild. That's what Paul says. Your sinful nature will run wild, and you're left in the wake of its destruction asking yourself things like, why would I ever say that? Or why do I always run back to this addiction? Or why does my anger just overwhelm me like that? Like, why is it like that? And the truth is, you could boil it down that the walls of self-control are broken down in your life. It's I lack self-control. I have not embraced self-control. Now, patience, on the other hand, it's very close, but it could be defined as this, as a willingness to bear two things, hardship or delay in order to get a specific outcome. So, patience is what can allow you to enjoy where you're at today on the way to where you're going. That's what allows you to do it. So you don't have to wait until everything in your life is just perfect to start enjoying your life. You can begin that today. You can have the fullness of the fruit of the Spirit and joy and all of that today because God is developing you slowly but surely, and you've embraced that. You've embraced these two virtues that you're pursuing in self-control and patience. You're pursuing that, but you're doing it God's way, not your way. And if you can fall in love with that why, you'll do anyhow to get that accomplished. So, 1 Samuel 16, I want to show you how that lives out in a story that maybe you're familiar with, maybe you're not. But it's a story about David in the first 13 verses. And we'll just kind of walk through the scripture and bring the truth of God's word out of it. It says that the Lord said to Samuel, this prophet, he said to Samuel, how long will you mourn for Saul, since I rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I'm sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen, that's really important, by the way, that God's the one who chose the king. He's the one who chose. He's making his will known to his people. I have chosen one of his sons to be king. But Samuel said, how can I go? If Saul hears about it, he'll kill me. The Lord said, take a heifer with you and say, I've come to sacrifice this to the Lord. And then invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I'll show you what to do. You are to anoint for me the one that I indicate. So I'm going to show you this next king to anoint. Do it my way, not your way. I'll show you all along. Verse 4, Samuel did what the Lord said. When he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders of the town trembled when they met him. They didn't know why he was there, and so they asked, do you come in peace? And Samuel replied, yes, in peace. I've come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come to the sacrifice with me. Then he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. So this is important. So the prophet Samuel, he consecrates Jesse and all of his sons. I mean, it says, all of these sons, I want to invite all of you to this party. That's so important in a minute. All of your sons, I want all of you to come to this party. Verse 6 says, when they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and thought, surely the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord. So he sees one of these sons walk in. And for whatever reason, Samuel says, this is the soon-to-be king. Whatever he looked like what he thought this soon-to-be king should look like. He probably looked very much like Saul, right? So he sees Eliab walk in, and you and I know this was not the soon-to-be king. But here's God's prophet in the right house seeing the wrong thing. He saw his appearance and he thought, this is him. This is the soon-to-be king. But he would come to realize in just a moment, I'll show you that it wasn't. And I just have to ask you, how often do we do that? I mean, we see other people's perceived success and we elevate them, or we see how many followers they have, or you see how much attention they're getting, and you feel like, man, they're amazing and their life is awesome, but I'm nothing. So you're like, God, it makes sense for you to use them because they're incredible, but I'm Well, I mean, I'm just me. I'm just a student. I'm just an adult who struggles with a string of past failures and addiction, or I'm not the smartest in the room. I'm not the wisest. You know, I don't have a lot of external success and all of that. And so it's like you look around and you say, I just don't understand. I don't understand because it's about them. It's not about me. And so Samuel looks at this one son and he thinks this has to be him. And it's because he's got Saul in his mind. And he thinks, well, whatever Saul was as king, that's what's going to be, that's who this next king is going to be as well. And so here's what we do. This is so important. Sometimes we miss what God is doing because we're looking for the next thing that resembles the old thing that God's already done. And the Lord corrects Samuel's view of success in verse 7. It's incredible. The Lord said to Samuel, listen, do not consider his appearance. Don't consider his height, for I've rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. Do you hear that? The Lord doesn't look at the things people look at. We're obsessed with celebrity culture. We're motivated by external success, but I promise you, anyone that you know whom God is using in a deep, meaningful, consistent, beautiful way, I'm telling you, they have embraced patience. They've embraced the dark room. They've embraced self-control where God is just developing them and working them, making them into the image of Jesus. They've spent time with the Lord, just them and the Lord, away from the glitz and the glamour. They've spent time with God like that, being developed by Him, being just engaged in this spiritual growth process in God's timing and in God's way. Listen, nothing kills what God is trying to do in your life more than your love and chase for popularity and external success. Nothing will kill that as fast as your love and chase of popularity and external success, because the Lord gives us all gifts. He gives us all things to do, but the problem is that we are way too impressed with the things that we do and not the people we're becoming. We become obsessed with the outside when you're going to see that the Lord values something different. And He says it in this verse. He says, people look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. So years ago when our girls were super small, this is the verse that we embraced. We embraced this verse and talked about it so much. In fact, the way we would say it, because it was a verse that was that we learned at the beginning through Awana on Wednesday nights with our kids. And the verse was, people, this way we would teach our girls, people look at the outside of a person, but God looks at and our girls would go, heart. I'm like, that's exactly right. People look at the outside of a person, but God looks at the heart. And so this verse is really tender to us, but the point of it is that the heart is the measurement of God. The heart is, a tender heart is soil that self-control and patience can be developed in slowly but surely, not instantly, but slowly but surely. That's where it grows, because the reality is this, is that a pure heart will take you so much further than raw talent. It will take you further than your raw talent ever could, and you need to know that and embrace that truth that, Tommy, you want to change the world. God is telling me, I want to change you. You want to change the world, I want to change you. So are you going to do it your way, instant gratification, or are you going to do it my way, which is a slow road? But it's so much more sincere and genuine and heartfelt and meaningful, and it's just better. So which way are you going to have it? God's trying to do a work in you so that He can do a work through you. That's important. And so it continues in verse 8. Then Jesse called Abinadab and had him pass in front of Samuel. So they're walking one son at a time by the prophet. But Samuel said, the Lord had not chosen this one either. Jesse then had Shammah pass by, but Samuel said, nor has the Lord chosen this one. So one by one, Jesse had 7 of his sons pass before Samuel. But Samuel said to him, the Lord has not chosen these. And you got to think Samuel's just as surprised as Jesse, because he thought it was the first one. And so one by one, and ultimately in verse 11, he asked Jesse, are these all the sons you have? Remember, I asked you to invite all of your sons to this. And Jesse said, well, they're still the youngest. Jesse answered, he's tending the sheep. So David is the soon-to-be king, but he's unnamed by his father here. He's overlooked by his father. His father doesn't even say his name. He's overlooked by Samuel. David's not even on his radar. And it's like they are at a party to anoint the next king of Israel, and that king has not even been invited to the party. How crazy is that? His dad doesn't even think to bring him. And Samuel thought it was somebody else. I mean, there's all this misconstrued stuff because we tend to gravitate toward external success. So that couldn't mean David. That couldn't mean David. And you see that David, you think, well, what's he doing? This is important. David is patiently doing what God has called him to do in that moment. He's tending sheep. He's tending sheep. So there he is, guarding sheep, patience, meekness. He's developing this art for the harp and for poetry, self-control, hard work. He's in the Word. He's studying the Scriptures. He's patiently living out his current calling when no one else was looking. And it wasn't glitzy. And it wasn't Instagram worthy. But he was in the dark room with the Lord, just allowing God to work on him, patience and self-control. The wine was so important to David that the how would come. But he's just walking through that wine. So Samuel, in verse 11, said, send for him. We're not going to sit down until he arrives. So verse 12, so he sent for him and had him brought in. He was glowing with health. He had a fine appearance, handsome features. So he's a 17-year-old boy, just like one of these teenagers standing up here before you that we're like, oh, they're just teenagers. Oh, like one day. But it's not one day. David is 17 here, forgotten by the masses. We're looking for popularity. We're looking for strong and tall and external success. And meanwhile, they have to actually bring in this forgotten one, and they bring David in, and it says that the Lord said, rise and anoint him. This is the one. So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed David in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. Whew. So David is anointed in front of everybody. Everybody sees it, including his brothers. And so this is so important that David, during all of this, if we had been in his shoes, in instant gratification world like we live in, we would have thought in that moment, there we go. Give me my throne today, right? Wouldn't that be us? Like, I want to begin ruling today. But that's not what David did. Patience, right? Self-control. Little by little, God is nurturing you and moving you. He went right back out to the fields to tend sheep. That's what he did. And so you say, well, why? Because God's working these virtues in him for a purpose that he's leading him to. And so you read about it in 2 Samuel 5, verses 4 and 5, that David was 30 years old when he became king. And he reigned 40 years. In Hebron, he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months. And in Jerusalem, he reigned over all Israel and Judah 33 years. So at 30, he became king. And at 37, he got the full reign of the entire kingdom. Yeah, but he was anointed as a teenager. True. But he became king, full king at 37. And in between, what's going on? This is what's going on. He's being developed by God little by little. He's embracing the virtues of God more than his own. He's having it God's way, not his way. He's patiently learning. He's learning and building up walls of self-control, like Proverbs says. He's walking this path slowly but surely, which reminds us of a principle that we got to get today, that patience and self-control are not passive virtues. They are active virtues. They're not passive. We view them as passive. They're not. They're active, meaning it's not just you're waiting around twiddling your thumbs. Like God is working on you. When? When I'm actively obeying what he's calling me to do today. So you may think, I deserve that promotion. Or God might have told you, you're going to do this one day. In my name, you're going to do that. And so you think, yeah, but today I need to begin it. No. Like, let God work on you. He's preparing you. He's building you. He's developing you. You're like an image that you don't want to hurry through. This isn't instant gratification. This is him doing a work in you that will ultimately lead you to do what you could only do if you've been called by Him to do it. It's very important. It's actually really beautiful to see it develop in that way. And so the question that I have for you today is just, are you willing to let God develop you His way, in His timing? Just slowly chipping away at my own sinful nature and making us more of who God has called us to be, and then to do what God has called us to do. So here's the hard thing that you've got to realize, is that everyone else around you in our world is going to be looking for a quick fix. They want instantly success, and they want it to be external success. But you know that God looks at the heart. They look at the outside of a person, but God looks at the heart. And if that's true and you embrace that truth, then greatness begins to be redefined to you and to me. Greatness is not just defined by what you do. It's actually beginning to be defined by who you are becoming. So that's where Galatians 5 comes in, where both of those virtues that are in this question are present. How do I develop that? Well, the Holy Spirit's going to give you these things. Why? Because I fell in love with God's way more than my way. And because I fell in love with the why, then the how just kind of naturally rolled out of me. I became more self-controlled. I became more patient. This is the key to the gospel, that greatness is not just in what you do. Greatness is in who you are becoming, and then that overflows into what you do. And do you know what Scripture says what you should do? You should become the servant of all. That's why Jesus washed His disciples' feet. That's why He did that. He's telling them, if you want to be the greatest, this is what it looks like. You become the servant of all. So are you willing? The question today is, are you willing to put the spotlight on Jesus and to take it off yourself? Are you willing for your name to fade away while His name becomes great? Are you willing for your instant opinion that you think should be obeyed quickly by God to take second chair to this slow development process where God is just working on you and building you and developing you into the image of Jesus Himself? If you want self-control and discipline, if you want patience and hard work, you want those types of things, then it's going to come through walking this process, not our own. And in doing that, He will build the walls of self-control around you, and He'll give you this sweet, sweet virtue of patience, more and more because you're listening to His voice and not popular opinion. It's really, really beautiful, and I hope you embrace that today.